Hi everyone, my name is Yusuf Oluwafemi Salako, popularly known as Ori David, a 500 level law student of the University of Lagos and founder of the Ori David concert. And if you are new to my channel, you may consider subscribing by clicking on the subscribe button down below and hitting that notification bell. Now subscribe and hit that notification bell. And today is Friday. Thank God it's Friday, isn't it? And as you're all aware, every Friday we have a session of Write and Speak It Well with Ori David. And today is another episode of Write and Speak It Well with Ori David. And on today's segment, we shall be looking at two words. Yes, you heard it right. Two words that lawyers, would-be lawyers, and even writers use erroneously because they use them in circumstances and contexts that those words are not fitting to. These two words are convince and persuade. I repeat, the two words that we'll be interrogating today are convince and persuade. Both of them are verbs. Both of them are action-carrying words. But then the question is this: is it the same thing to convince a man as to persuade a man? If you persuade the man, are you necessarily trying to convince the man? And if you're trying to convince a person, are you necessarily also persuading the person? Now, what needs to be stated at the very outset is that some words, some English words, they have inherent and intrinsic force in them. That is, they are powerful words. They convey the notion of force. And as Ori David, the eminent writer, cautioned, we cannot by overuse empty a word of its force. We cannot continue to allow a word to deteriorate as far as the force of the word is concerned. And it is within this context that I look at the dichotomy between the verb convince and the verb persuade. Historically, etymologically, the word or the verb convince has a notion of force in it. It is usually used when the notion of vanquishing is concerned. So convince is a powerful word, more powerful than the verb persuade. So whenever you will use the verb convince, there is a notion that you have argued so well that the other party has to acknowledge that your own position represents the fact, represents the truth. It then means that it is only in the context of the acknowledgement of some truth, theory, or fact that the word convince should be used. You can only convince a court, or when you say you have convinced the court, it then means that you have advanced arguments so well that the justices agreed with you and believe that your position represents the correct position of the law. And that is the reason why one of the instruments that you can use to convince a court, they are case laws. And not just anyhow cases, especially cases that have been decided by a superior court. So supposing you are before the High Court and you are citing the Supreme Court's cases that are relevant to the present matter, not cases that can be distinguished. Now, in that particular circumstance, you can use the verb convince, because you can use these cases to convince the justices. You can use the case to convince the court. Why? Because of the notion or the doctrine of stare decisis. That is judicial precedent that says that the decisions of superior courts are binding on lower courts. Which means you can use those cases, and in that context you can say that you are convincing the court, or you're trying to convince the court. Why? Because you're trying to make the court accept and acknowledge the truth and the fact that they are bound by the decisions of the superior courts. But when you want to use the word convince or the verb persuade, it means you are also trying to advance argument in a way that will make your listener or the court in this regard to act in a certain way. And that is why there are some authorities that we say they are of persuasive effect. They're not binding but persuasive. Why? Because by the time you usher in these authorities, you're not trying to make the court acknowledge some truth or some fact. No. What you're trying to do is that you're trying to bring to the knowledge of the court that in a particular jurisdiction or in another clime that there is a reasoning that you are trying to persuade the court to adopt. You're not trying to convince the court to acknowledge that there is a way that they do things in another jurisdiction. Instead, you're bringing out those cases to say that you're trying to ask the court to also act in that particular manner. That means you're trying to persuade the court to basically adopt the reasoning in those cases because the court is not bound to do so. So in that regard, you cannot use those cases to convince the court. Instead, you can use those cases to persuade the court. So you can see that there is a difference between convincing a person or the court and trying to persuade the court. Yes, I must agree that there is an overlap in meaning. There is an overlap in meaning. However, if we continue to throw the words convince and persuade about without being careful, it is the word convince that will suffer the deterioration of force in meaning. And we cannot continue to, through our bad habits and bad usage, empty the word of its force. And I hope with this that I've either been able to convince you or to persuade you that there is a distinction in meaning between the word convince and the word persuade. And thank you. That is all for today. Do not forget, my name has not changed, for I still remain Yusuf Oluwafemi Salako, popularly known as Ori David, a 500 level plus student of the University of Lagos and founder of the Ori David Concerts. Until I see you next week, Friday, on Write and Speak It Well with Ori David. I say do go out there and convince and persuade with rhetorics. Thank you.